starts here, and it goes, and it goes, and it goes. Hi, welcome to another episode of Yarn to Table. I'm Celeste, and this is the show about my knitting life. I have so many exciting projects to cover with you today. There are actually 5 finished objects, 3 of which you've never seen before in progress at all, and 4 brand new whips, which are also all never before seen. So, never before seen here. Some of them you may have glimpsed on Instagram. So there's a lot to talk about. Because of that, I think I'm probably not going to have an On the Horizon segment or a chit chat segment today. And honestly, everything that's going on in my life right now is pretty much just more of the same. It's a lot of school and a lot of work. However, if you find yourself, kind of wanting to keep up to date with that kind of thing a little bit more, if you're interested, you can always follow me on Instagram. I'm on Instagram and Ravelry as Celestful. Of course, you can find the group for Yarn to Table on Ravelry as well, linked in the doobly-doo. That's where you're going to find all the threads for the knit along, which we have going on now, the FiberQuest KAL. And speaking of Instagram and just personal life stuff, I am considering doing maybe like weekend only vlogs for Vlogtober this year. So let me know if that's something that you would be interested in seeing. I really enjoyed all the vlogging that I did last year. I don't think I'm going to be able to do daily vlogs. I'm definitely not going to try to do daily vlogs for October this year, just because October seems to be my busiest month of the school year, and last year I almost lost my mind, and it's a more difficult semester, the bigger workload this year than it was then, so but I'd like to participate in some way, so I thought maybe I would try weekend ones. Let me know if you're interested in that. I will probably be doing daily vlogs for Vlogmas this year, which is like my favorite thing ever. So yeah, let me know about that. Where was I going with this? Right, and then the FiberQuest KAL, which I mentioned, is a year-long knit along. There is a playlist in the doobly-doo. If you don't know what I'm talking about, get some more information on that. But we have just ended the land of silk, and we have a winner to announce, and that winner is Cappuccino 136. So congratulations. You are going to be taking home this beautiful skein of Norah's Silk Garden, which I picked up at a local yarn store here way back in December when I was planning this knit along. It stuck out to me as the perfect prize for the Land of Silk. So it's been sitting in my stash waiting for you all year, and if you will message me your mailing info on Ravelry, I will get it sent out to you. So Cappuccino knit a really beautiful lace shawl wrap scarf. I believe it's rectangular, so more of a scarf or a wrap, but like a summer weight lacy piece that she made out of a 70/30 bamboo silk blend, which sounds like a really, really interesting, cool yarn. So it looked really, really beautiful. Check it out if you haven't yet on the thread in the Ravelry group. And I'm sure that she will be making something really cool with this. So I look forward to seeing it. That brings us to the next land for the knit along, which is the land of wool. So for this, your projects need to be at least 75% wool, and it needs to be a breed specific wool. So it needs to say the breed. Anything but merino is allowed, because this is all about branching out, so we want to go beyond merino is the idea here. But multiple breed blends are fine. So if you want to use, for example, Brooklyn Tweed Shelter, which is a Columbia Targhee blend, that has Columbia and Targhee together, that's fine. It doesn't have to be a single breed. We just need to know the breed. It needs to be breed specific and not just say generically like wool. And it needs to be at least 75% wool because, you know, this is about projects that are showcasing the wool. And unlike something like silk, which is more of, you know, something you can add into the blend, so for that the limit was needed to be at least 15%. Here I think it makes a lot of sense for it to be the majority, obviously, because it's wool. So I'm going to have an FO thread up in the group soon that'll detail all of those rules for this month and for this 2-month period, excuse me, and the chatter thread is already up there. So looking forward to seeing what you guys make. It's still a little bit warm here, even though it is already September. So I'm just having some La Croix today instead of tea. The cran raspberry one. Very delicious. Okay, time to start talking about projects. So the first FO that I have to share with you is what I'm wearing today, and that is the Wispy cardigan by Hannah Fettig. I have knit this out of Sweet Sparrow on her Gosling base, which is her MCN. And the colorway is called Queenie. It is inspired by the character from Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. And it's just this really lovely sort of tonal pink. So I was almost finished with this in the last episode, and I kind of talked through a lot of the details about it. So I'm not going to repeat myself a ton. I'm just going to share with you some of the new findings. So then I spoke about how I was going to rip out this neckline and bind off here again to make it a bit stretchier, which I did end up doing. I actually used the Jenny's Surprisingly Stretchy Bind Off, I think is what it's called, to give myself a ton of stretch here. I was considering whether I needed to just bind off with a larger needle or actually do a stretchy bind off. I ended up going for the stretchy bind off, and I'm really glad I did. The fit is perfect. I feel like it just was a great choice. So I would definitely recommend that to anyone who is making this. And then I have some FO photos that I've just taken that I will pop in here so that you guys can get a better idea of the look on and the overall shape, since you can really just see my shoulders. But the other thing about it that I've noticed with wear, so I finished this like about a month ago, so I've been wearing it, and it's definitely got some pilling that happens under the arm and right here, and that is basically par for the course when you are knitting with cashmere, especially at a looser gauge. So this is a Merino cashmere nylon. I think it's an 80-10-10. So 10% cashmere. Cashmere is softer, shorter fibers. They tend to pill a little bit. It's something that we talked about in the About Goat Fibers video, which is in the FiberQuest KAL playlist if you're interested in hearing more on cashmere. So that's just one of the things with cashmere, that it's like advantages and disadvantages. I will say, however, this is also knit at a loose gauge, and so that can exacerbate pilling as well. And I think that in the future, okay, sorry about the fluctuating light. I'm trying to make it as good as possible for you guys right now. Sorry. So what I was saying was, in the future, knowing more about things like that, I think I will do a better job of not only assigning yarn bases to patterns based on things like that, where if you're knitting with cashmere, maybe you're going to be knitting, you'll choose a pattern that would be knit at a tighter gauge anyway, but also when you choose your gauge. So for example, one of the things that I have in my queue is the Alyeska, which is an all-over colorwork pullover by Kaitlin Hunter. And I purchased the Alyeska kit, the exact colors that were dyed for the sample, because I really, really loved them. And the kind of only thing that made me hesitate about it, and I ended up getting the kit anyway, but they were dyed only on single ply base, which I normally would not choose a single ply for a sweater because it can pill. So in that case, I know that when I make that sweater, I'm going to sort of probably choose a denser gauge than the pattern actually recommends. I'm probably going to just go as dense as I can because obviously, like, the tighter it's knit, that sort of just helps hold the fibers in, and so that can work against pilling. So those are all sort of things that the more that I feel like I learn about fibers and different ways of plying yarn and just all of those kinds of things, I get better at matching things up. So if I were knitting this sweater again, if I were purchasing the yarn now, I probably wouldn't have chosen the MCN base. I maybe would have chosen like her 75-25 or something like that. To knit it at this gauge, or if I were starting it again, you know, and I'd really thought about it, maybe I would choose a denser gauge. So anyway, it's not a major deal. It's like the price you pay for cashmere. It was a little bit of pilling. I scraped them off in like 2 seconds, and you know, whatever. So it's not that big of a deal. It's more just like a learning opportunity for you know, making all the choices that you make, matching yarn to projects, choosing what gauge, you know, like choosing where you're going to do alterations like that and knit it maybe a different gauge than it suggests in the pattern. That's all just kind of stuff that I'm getting more comfortable with the more that I knit, and the more that I learn. So yeah, anyway, that's my first garment that I have to show you. The next garment is something you've not seen before unless you've been on Instagram. And it's this beautiful faded camisole. So this is the Breeze Racerback by Jessie May Martinson. It has, as you can see, this little racerback design. And I knit this as a fade. This was my first fade. I have been wanting to do a fade for a long time, and I don't have a big enough stash to find things that seem like they fade well within my stash most of the time. For this, I was lucky because since it's just a little tank instead of a big old shawl or like a full-on sweater, I didn't need that much of each color. And so when you open up the stash to things where you have smaller amounts, there's a lot more options. So I was able to find something that I think worked really well as a fade. And these are all with leftover yarn. And I just think that the effect is so beautiful, and it definitely made it a lot of fun to knit. Like, I had a really, really good time. I was inspired to do this as a fade just because I had seen so many of the samples and just so many of the things that Jessie May makes. She and I are friends on Instagram, and her palette, like, these colors are very much in her palette, and just looking at her stuff, either the stuff that she designed or the color choices that she would make with other patterns, it just kind of, I looked at it, I got super inspired, I was feeling it, I was looking in my stash and seeing these colors, and over a very short period of time after finding her, I was like, I'm going to make her pattern and I'm going to do it in these colors. And it was just like one of those things where you hadn't thought about it or been planning on doing it, and then you just suddenly are inspired, and it went by really fast. I knitted in about a week, and I haven't even been able to devote that much time to knitting lately, or especially when I was working on this. But anyway, I did make an alteration, which is that I really liked the idea of it just being extremely smooth and not having a ribbed bottom. So I didn't do a ribbed bottom. I did a little fold over thing where you do a purl row and then you fold on the purl row and you pick up and you just make a little folded hem. So I just did that, and I really like it. And then everything else I knit to pattern. I did end up not having enough of this color, and I did not, I didn't want to do some other color. I didn't really have anything in my stash that I wanted. I really wanted to use this one. So what I did was I actually cut up the shawl that I had initially made with this. Sorry to anyone that was a fan of that shawl. I made this shawl, I forget what it was even called. It was like my first shawl. I made it a long time ago. And out of beautiful Madeline Tosh, including this gorgeous colorway. And I just never really wore it. It's like an asymmetrical triangle, which is not the easiest thing for me to wear. And then my cat had like made some holes in it, and anyway, it was just sort of sitting around not getting love for a long time. And I decided to just take the yarn out of it. So I literally just cut into it and unraveled and stole the yarn from it to finish this. And I don't feel bad about it. I feel like the yarn went to good use. So that happened. Oh, the other alteration I made was just the thing where you sort of slip the first stitch to make this, I think, a cleaner edge. So I did that. That wasn't in the pattern. And everything else I think was to pattern. This is something that I will probably mostly wear like to do yoga and things like that. Like I don't wear a ton of sleeveless things on the reg right now because I'm not super confident about how my arms look, which is like sucks to admit, but that's the situation. So I could also see myself wearing it like underneath blazers and things. I probably wouldn't wear it underneath a cardigan just because I feel like that's a lot of knit going on. I don't know. I feel kind of weird about it. But yeah, but it's kind of like a fun special piece that I could wear if I want to show off the back. Then you know I can wear it with like a sports bra for like a yoga class, or I can hide the back and wear it just under like a blazer and kind of show the colors. But this is definitely more of a process than a product knit for me. I honestly don't see myself getting a ton of wear out of the tank top. It's more that I really enjoyed playing with these colors and sort of like doing my first fade and just having fun with it. So anyway, I had a lot of fun with that, and I'm really pleased with how it turned out. I think that the colors go really beautifully together, and I was honestly surprised by how smoothly they all faded together. I think it looks really nice. Okay, we have 3 more FOs to get through. Let's go to the one that you've seen before. That is the Guernsey Wrap. It's all done. This thing has so much yarn in it. I'm gonna, I guess I'll just unfold it for you just so you can see how big it is. Starts here, and it goes, and it goes, and it goes. It is enormous, enormous. I started this back in the winter, and it's a pattern by Jared Flood. It's a very simple, just knit and purl texture, which I believe is like a Guernsey tradition, the Channel Island of Guernsey. And it has been stretch blocked on wires to get it to be this sort of like nice, wide, perfect rectangle. I used all of my blocks, all of my blocking mats and I used my wires, and I, just tons of them to get this whole thing into this perfect rectangle, which you may have seen on Instagram stories. And it took forever, and it was so worth it because it really, really just came alive when it was blocked out. I will say, it doesn't look this transparent really unless you have like the light shining through it, which I do right now because I'm in front of a window. I still wish that I had knitted at a tighter gauge. I knitted at this gauge because at the time these were the needles that I had available and I was really eager to cast on. And I don't regret that because this was a project that I really needed to be working on at that time. It kind of helped get me out of a slump. And I really enjoyed it and I did not want to wait around. But, ideally, this could have been knitted at a tighter gauge, and I wish that it had been. Because I knit it at this gauge, I also ended up doing something where I basically just kept doing the first chart instead of, there's like this symmetrical thing that's supposed to happen where you have like something in the center. And I didn't do that because I was afraid that I wasn't going to have the right amount of yarn to get it exactly centered, so I kind of just altered it. It's fine. So yeah, that's sort of like, if I were being really perfectionistic about this, I mean, I ideally would have knit it at a different gauge. However, this again was more about the process for me. This was about like something that I started when I really needed to get out of a slump, and it felt really good at the time. Since then, I set it aside for a long while, and then I picked it up recently wanting to get it off the needles. This week I actually sat and I watched the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society, which is a Netflix film adapted from a book that I read and loved many years ago. And of course, this being the Guernsey Wrap, I thought I will watch this movie, but like only if I work on this while I watch the movie. So that was like sort of a motivating factor that got me to spend a nice big chunk of time working on this. And so that got me through a fair amount of what was left, and over the hump of sort of being more familiar with the texture again and having it feel a bit more intuitive again so that I could kind of just plow through the rest of it. So that was nice, and now it is done. I am toying with the idea of giving this to my mother, who would love it. She loves brown, and she saw me working on it and was in love with it. My hesitation is that it's non-superwash, and I don't like to make her a ton of non-superwash things because just knowing her, she might throw it in the washer. Even if she thinks that she's not going to, or she's not planning on it. I lived with her for a long time and she ruined a lot of my sweaters. She never meant to. It's just, when I make things for her and I know they're going to be for her, I tend to choose superwash wool at the beginning, even though I know that she appreciates this kind of wool, just because I know that she would be devastated if she ruined something that I made for her. So I'm not sure, but I kind of want to give it to her. Her birthday is in a few days, and I think that she would like it. Obviously, I love it too, but I just don't know. That's the only thing that makes me hesitate about giving it to her is, and maybe it would be easier since it's not a garment. It might be easier for her to like remember that she can't just throw it in the washing machine. I don't know. I'll probably just give it to her. I mean, I've given her hats, and I've given her even another scarf or another shawl last year that was non-superwash, and you know, I don't hear about them getting ruined. I just, in the back of my mind, it's like a fear that it would happen. And it's not even so much that I would be devastated if my work got thrown into the washer. It's more that I know that she would be upset. So I don't know. I know it's like a common topic for knitters is, you know, non-superwash and gifts. Especially for like people that have young children and just people that aren't knitters themselves, aren't like in the know about fiber. So anyway, that's something to think about. I'll show you guys the texture a little bit better. You can see it. Really, really lovely stuff. This, by the way, is out of Brooklyn Tweed Arbor, which is 100% Tarky and a DK weight, and just really, really lovely, lovely yarn. Okay, so the next two FOs that I have, final two FOs to share, are both little baby items. I have shared before on the show that I occasionally knit things that are for a baby that I eventually plan to have, although this is not me announcing that that's happening anytime soon. Not pregnant. This is something that Ryan and I are wanting to do, planning to do, hopefully soon after I graduate. And for a little while now, I have been knitting ahead, which I know some people do. It's still always kind of a little bit of an awkward or slightly embarrassing thing to talk about, I guess. So these are things that I don't share on Instagram because in the context of Instagram, I feel like people just see a picture of like baby socks and they like to assume that it's a pregnancy announcement, and it just, everything unravels from there. So these, I will be sharing these with you guys, but these are not things I've shown my family and friends. These have not been on Instagram, so I assume that you guys will understand as fellow knitters. But yeah, I wish I could share them on Instagram because they're so freaking adorable, but you know, that time will come when there's an actual announcement, and then I will feel more comfortable just sort of throwing these out to a place where family and friends might get a little bit too excited. So anyway, I really love knitting baby things ahead because, first of all, baby projects are fun and fast, and there's a lot of things that I know I will want for my child that I can easily knit ahead. So my concept is like, once I'm pregnant, I feel like I would like to maximize the knitting of baby garments, and you kind of need to know when you're due to knit garments because you want to match up the size that the baby's going to be with the season and the weather. So like if I were knitting something that would be better for the cold weather, like mittens, for example, and I know that the baby's going to be born in winter, then I know I want to knit a newborn size versus the baby's going to be born in summer, I need to knit a 6-month size. I know mittens are not a garment, so that wasn't a great example. But you get what I'm saying. So I want to maximize my garment knitting, and I don't feel super comfortable knitting garments ahead because I don't know what time of year I would be having this baby. However, hats, socks, booties, baby blankets, those are all things that I feel like are pretty year-round needs. So that's where I have been placing my efforts. And recently I did a little bit more baby knitting, and I made a hat and some booties. So this is the hat. that's it from the side. So it has these little ear flaps. And this is called, sorry, my computer went dead. There we go. This is called the Garter ear flap hat, and it's a free pattern by Purl Soho. It is designed for Aran weight yarn, and I knit it with Aran weight yarn. It only took about 60 yards? I don't know. It says in the pattern. It did not take very much. These are just some leftovers that I had of some yarn I got for a mystery knit along a couple years ago, and I absolutely love this yarn. It is by the Knitted Wit, and I mean, I love the cute little speckles on it. This is called Aspen Forest, the colorway, so I've been calling this my Aspen hat. I love the speckles, but I also really love the base. It's super, super squishy. It is a superwash, I believe, and it's maybe like a 4-ply? I think it's a 3-ply Aran, so it's really nice and squishy and beautiful. And I just loved this yarn so much that I saved the leftovers, even though I didn't know what on earth I could make with such a small amount of Aran weight yarn. But this pattern was perfect for it. Another great thing about baby knits. So yeah, you can see it has this sort of faux seam up the back because you are knitting garter in the round. So that's what that is. And then it has these lovely centered double decreases that create this sort of visible shaping. And the ear flaps are done with short rows, so the whole thing is done in the round. Cute little tassel on top. Just very, very cute little thing. And I think this comes in a variety of sizes for larger kids and maybe even up to adults. So yeah, I think it comes up to adults. So I did that, and I also did some little brioche booties. Oh my god. They're so cute. Oh, I love them so much. So these are called the Blue Step Booties by Regina Willer. And I found these because Luga, I think that's how you say her name, of Fiber Tales, made them. They are 2-color brioche, and I used some minis from my advent calendar from last year, which was a Homespun House. So there's this sort of greenish one, and then you can get a better image of the contrasting is this sort of purpley neutral with some green flecks in it and brown flecks. So together, that's how the brioche looks. Now this pattern is wonderful. However, I basically had to go off of the project notes that another person had made, which I have on my project page on Ravelry. I say the name in my notes of that person, so you can look them up if you're interested. I would recommend doing that. The actual pattern is a free pattern. It has been translated into English. I would say the translation does not so much seem to be the problem, although the translation is a little clunky. It's more that the actual description of what you're doing could be more clear. And also, she does not give directions for doing double brioche at all, double 2-color brioche. So for one thing, this is technically a half brioche stitch. On the inside, rather than being an exact reverse, the inside looks like this, because every other round you're doing brioche, and then the next round you're sort of resolving the brioche, if that makes sense. You're putting it back together, rather than it being a true brioche. So it basically looks like a brioche on one side and not on the other side. I'm not really sure what the advantage of that would be. Like, I'd rather just do regular brioche, I feel like, but anyway, it's a new skill, I guess. I kind of want to learn whether there are some advantages to it or kind of what the point is with it. But it was fun to do. It's not as fun as regular brioche. I might try these again and do just regular double brioche, But anyway, my point is that in the instructions, it doesn't even tell you how to do them with 2 colors. The sample has 2 colors, but she never explains how to do that. And there's some other stuff that just isn't explained super well. However, the project notes that this other person took were great, and I just followed them. It was all stuff that I could have figured out by myself, but I was not in the mood to be doing that. I kind of just wanted to like follow a pattern. And so it was nice that I could just follow a pattern by following this other person's project notes. So I really appreciated that those were out there for me to use. So I would recommend doing that. I would definitely recommend this pattern. I mean, it was really fun to make. I think it would be even more fun if I changed it to proper brioche instead of half brioche. But really fun to make, used only a tiny amount of yarn, so it's perfect for any minis or scraps you may have. A really great opportunity to play with fun color combinations. And I just think these will be like my go-to baby gift knit from now on, because I can just go in and in my stash and see like what colors I think would play well together and be fun to use. I want to make more for sure. I will probably make more as my knitting ahead, but I'll probably also make more for other people, just because they're really, really, really fun and really, really cute. So yeah, the way these were knit, by the way, you start them basically like a toe-up sock. It starts with a Judy's Magic cast on, and you knit the sole, and I did the whole thing in magic loop as if I were doing a sock, and then you just sort of knit the front and the back at the same time, again like you're doing a toe-up sock. You do this sort of shaping and you keep going up, and you've got this nice little stockinette rolled hem. So the construction is really fun, really simple, no seaming or anything like that. And just, if you can knit socks, you can knit these for sure. And they're really cute. So that brings me to works in progress. Almost 40 minutes into the episode. Told you I had a lot to talk about. Okay, let's take a look at what I have been knitting on lately. Very exciting thing is living in my field bag, and that is my shawl design that I'm working on. So here's the thing. I got this yarn, show you my little swatch. I got this yarn in Wales. It is local Welsh yarn. The sheep are from Ceredigion, the county where my main base was, there at the University of Wales at Lampeter. And I got 4 skeins of it. I wanted to use it to make a shawl, design a shawl inspired by Wales. That is my plan. I have all kinds of ideas. I'm very excited about it. As I spoke about last episode, I struggle with the fact that I am inspired to do this, but I don't really have the time to dedicate to it. So what I basically did was, I was so excited. I had this one weekend where I got ahead on my schoolwork so that I wouldn't have to feel guilty about devoting like a full day to working on this. And so I did the swatch, and I determined the weight of the yarn. I measured to see how many yards per for the weight I was getting, how many yards per 100 grams. I did the wraps per inch test. I actually posted on Instagram, and I thought that I was getting like a light worsted, which is what I was expecting. But after I measured my gauge, I think it's actually more of an Aran. So I did all of that, and I kind of like wrote up the first couple charts for, I decided what I wanted the texture to be, and I wrote up the first couple charts, and I got started on it. However, at this moment, I am stuck on the math, and I have put it aside for a little bit because, again, as I said, I really need to like actually take big chunks of time and mental energy to dedicate to this, and so I have to set it aside right now. It has been sitting aside for a few weeks now, since I got started on it and got stuck, which is kind of sad, but it just is what it is. I know that I will have time in November when the semester ends, and I just have to be patient. So I think I'm just literally going to set this aside until then, and when it's time, and I can pour myself into it, which is what I really want to do, is just properly dive into it. So that's sort of the story there. I am still extremely excited to share this with you. I have a little Welsh cake on here, which I specifically got on Etsy and looked for Welsh cake progress keepers because I wanted something that would remind me of Wales. And I actually found this with a maker who was selling a set of other little UK treats. So you may see some more of those popping up on my other works in progress. They're all very cute. I finished my Guernsey Wrap with a little chocolate digestive biscuit on there, with its little like waffle texture. They make me so happy. They like take me back to the UK, which is just a very, very special place to me. So my little Welsh cake reminds me of Wales, of course, and of the delicious Welsh cakes that I got to eat there. So I'm going to be coming back to this. The other thing about this is I don't know exactly how I'm going to be sharing it with you guys. I don't want to talk up front about all of my plans for it because certain things may change in the design process, and I'm not sure I want to constantly show it as it's a work in progress. I like sharing it with you now because it's just gotten started, and there's not a lot to see. But I think I would like to in the future actually design it, finish it, and have a big reveal where I can show you, here it is. And then, I mean, ideally, if I don't know when I'm going to find the time to finish it and write up the pattern and do all of those things, but what I would like to do when I can is to have a big reveal and have an actual proper release where I write up the pattern. Maybe some of you would be interested in testing it for me, and I would ideally like to provide it and sell it for a small amount and kind of launch it into the world as like a real design, get it tech edited so that I know that it's good, and just really do it properly. That's something I would really, really like to do. That's been a goal of mine for a while. So all of that is something that feels very far off to me at this moment, as I'm kind of very much living week to week and deadline to deadline in my work and my school. But this is a dream that is occupying a lot of my mind space as well. So look for that in the future. I will keep you updated as there is anything to update you on, but you may not be seeing or hearing about this for a little bit now. So put that away and stay tuned. I'm very excited to share more with you when I have more to share. Next thing is my latest pair of socks, which I mentioned these were one of the things that I was thinking about casting on last week, and I went ahead and chose to cast on the Clark socks by Jacqueline Salem. As I talked about then, I also have an idea for a sock design, and now I have some more sock design ideas. So all of that is something that maybe you'll be coming down the bend maybe next year. Maybe that's a good long-term plan for something that I can focus on when I graduate. So I certainly have lots of ideas, and I'm very excited about that. But right now, I really wanted to work on, I didn't want to have two designs going. I mean, that's just too crazy for me right now. So the sock design is on the back burner, and I wanted to do someone else's design. But I wanted to do some texture and something interesting. So I picked up the Clark sock pattern by Jacqueline Salem. It is in this one-of-a-kind colorway from Fiber for the People. It's her Lucky Strike is what she calls her one-of-a-kind colorways, and she does them with a process that is all about conserving water and dye. She lives out in Las Vegas, where I think water conservation is a bit of a bigger deal there than it is where I live in a river valley. And so I think it's really cool that she's found a way to make that a part of her process and also get these sort of special colorways out of it. So this color is called Gingerbread, and it's sort of a beige with a pink tonality to it. And every now and then you get little flecks of red, like here. And I thought it matched up with the Clark sock pattern really well. So the Clark socks on the front, they have these diagonal rows of purl bumps and this center braided cable. And then on the back, there's a slimmer, simpler sort of two-part cable. And it's just that texture on the whole of the sock. This little guy is my Jammy Dodger, one of my British treat progress keepers. So that's making me happy, and I love how the color goes with the sock. This sock pattern is lovely. So Jacqueline Salem just put out another textured sock, the Aster sock. So a lot of people are excited about that right now, as am I. I'm quite behind on things, so I still haven't knit any of her socks yet, and I'm just in love with the Clark socks, so I cast those on. And the pattern is super intuitive. Like, the way that this works, this chart that you have that incorporates the diagonals and the braid, it's like an 8-round repeat, right? And the one on the back is also an 8-round repeat. And for both the front and the back, the only time that you're cabling is on rows 2 and 6. And you always know if you're on rows 2 and 6 because the spot where you do your purl bump is always exactly the same spot as your row. So you do it on the first stitch on your first row and the second stitch on your second row. So the purl bumps tell you which row you're on, and that tells you whether or not you're going to cable. So basically, I glanced at the chart like once, and I have not had to look at the chart since. Even though it's a fairly complicated thing, for the front and the back, I just always know what I'm doing, which is amazing. Now, that does not mean that I haven't messed up, because I have. I have cabled the wrong direction, and I have cabled on the wrong row. In fact, I was very proud of myself for dropping down 3 rows and with across the cable and then recabling it on the correct row and coming back up rather than ripping out the whole 3 rows. I did that, and I was feeling pretty good about myself. Like, that was a nice moment. I was proud. But yeah, so I have made mistakes. However, it is just such a genius design. Like, I just feel like Jacqueline nailed it because it's so beautiful and it's so fun to knit. And it's just like, I love when there's no compromise between process and product, and like you're making something that you love and it's also really fun to make. And I just think that's exactly what this is. This is just one of the most intuitive, complex charts I've ever worked on, and I can see myself making many more pairs of these socks and really enjoying them. So bravo, Jacqueline, and I totally recommend this pattern to anyone. It is really, really fun and really beautiful. So I have not been knitting on it a ton. This is my kind of like on the go knitting. I do have a little cable needle that I've been using. I like to cable without a cable needle, but for this, I'm not sure if it's because of how small the gauge is or more likely just because of how tight the gauge is. So when you knit socks, you tend to knit at a tighter gauge than you normally would. And the tighter gauge, I think, makes it more difficult to cable without a needle because when you pull your stitches off the needle, they just kind of want to move or to come out. It's just they're not as reliably just staying there. I don't know. I assume that makes sense if you're familiar with cabling without a cable needle. Anyway, I have been using the cable needle, but it hasn't been annoying me too much that I have to, so it's not a huge deal. This cable needle, by the way, is from Knit Picks. It is their beautiful, like, colorful wood, and it's just a nice little straight guy. I got it in a set of 3. This is the smallest one. And yeah, I guess that's all I have to say about this. Very fun to work on. It also kind of matches my cute little sock sack from Home Fiber Co., which I love. So now let's talk about the sweaters. You have seen before the Sunset Highway, which I knit on only during recording sessions of Return to Stars Hollow, and as I mentioned last time, I'm not going to update you on that one until anything interesting is happening again, because right now it's just stockinette body and you've seen the yoke a million times. I mention it only to say that that sweater included, I'm currently working on 3 Kaitlin Hunter sweaters, which is a bit excessive, but I can't help it. I really love Kaitlin Hunter patterns. Obviously, this is not an uncommon opinion. Kaitlin Hunter is amazing. We all know this. But I just have to say, full disclosure, I'm about to show you the 2 sweaters that I'm working on. They're both Kaitlin Hunter, as is the sweater I'm not showing. I'm very obsessed with Kaitlin Hunter, and I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm knitting 3 sweaters by the same design. It's insane. But I couldn't help it. These are the things I want to make right now, and I love them. So anyway, let's look at them, shall we? Here in my adorable little Peapod Threads bag with my adorable little pins that I love is the Zweig. Now I believe I've shared the beginning of this with you guys, and I know I talked about the yarn and how I really wanted to do a non-superwash Zweig. So this is Mad Fuzzy, and I also have Shetland Wool from Jameson's. And I'm still on the lace. I think I was on the lace when I showed it to you before. If I showed it to you before, I don't know. But so this is the yoke. It's got a little bit of color work, and then you get into some lace, and there's going to be some more color work, and then just a textured body. I'm really liking how the lace is looking in this yarn. You know, maybe I haven't shown this on the podcast before. I don't remember. I guess it would be here when... Yeah, it was just on the horizon. I just showed you the yarn. Okay, so I'm really liking how the lace looks with this yarn. Obviously, it's going to bloom a lot more and be even more beautiful. But the speckling, I think, goes really well with the lace. And the whole thing is just, I'm liking the colors together. There's some brown speckles in the pink that I think pick up the brown really well. And I have marked my repeats with little stitch markers because that makes you go faster. And I really like that. I am more than halfway through the lace chart now. The lace has been a little bit slow going. It's slightly complicated lace, really beautiful lace, and I have not picked it up in at least a week. I was focusing on finishing the Guernsey Wrap, and then I let myself start the next sweater I'm going to show you. I said I could start it when I finished the Guernsey Wrap, and I've been working on that pretty much nonstop for a couple days. So I have not picked this up in a little while. But when I do, I'm sure I will blow through this lace fairly quickly and be on to the body. You can see just how these colors look together. I love how the brown has little bits of blue and stuff in it, and the pink has little bits of blue and brown. I feel like the colors, it's like they were dyed to go together, even though they're totally different sources. I mean, they're from two different countries. But also the texture, like they're both 2-ply and they're really similar weights, and I just think that they go so perfectly together. I'm just really, really pleased with how they're working out. So yeah, I'm very excited about this. And I can't even remember. I think I might be knitting it. Wait, I think I'm knitting it on smaller needles. I think a size down 2 needles from what she recommends. I'm using US 5s, which I typically have to do just because I have a loose gauge. So I'm pretty sure I'm knitting it, I can't remember now, but I think I'm knitting it at about the same gauge that she suggests, but just on smaller needles to get there. And it's a bit of an oversized look. The thing with Kaitlin Hunter is she tends to design things that are sometimes more oversized than I want them to be. But there's so much space there to play around that I find in my experience, it's been really easy to just do things like kind of knit it at a different gauge than she wants, or even with a different yarn, as I'll show you in my next sweater. And, you know, just size up or size down, or just, there's a lot of room to kind of experiment with that. And because all of her sweaters are designed to have a lot of ease, I just feel like there's a lot of opportunity to mess around with that and still have it end up coming out looking pretty good. Like, I feel like if you're worried about sizing or you have trouble sizing things, these are good sweaters for you, because there's just so much wiggle room with regard to how it's even supposed to fit that you can end up being kind of off base and it still looks good, I guess is what I'm saying. Okay, final project. So my big La Bien Aimée, La Bien Aimée tote, and this is the Tecumseh. I have been so in love with the Tecumseh since I saw it on Instagram back when she was still working on the design. And I've just been dying to cast it on. So I went for it. Here we go. I have it on this really long cable right now because I was trying on the yoke. I love it. So these are similar colors to her sample. She had a neutral base. Hers was more of a cream and a sort of brown and a black. And I liked that, but I wanted to kind of mix it up and do like slightly my own take on it. You can look on the pattern page and there are just so many different color schemes that people have gone with Tecumseh. They've done like a dark background with lighter colors and so many cool things. I really, really liked the color story of the original one. So as I said, I wanted to keep kind of similar to it, but I also wanted to try my own thing just to kind of keep it fresh and interesting. So these are all Madeline Tosh. And the base is Doe Eyes. It reads as a neutral, but up close you can see it's like got these purple and pinks in it. And then the crosses are Rye Bourbon, which is a really beautiful sort of pumpkin-y rust with brown speckles. And then these pennants or flags or feathers or shields, whatever. I've heard a lot of people call them different things. They are done with Bittersweet, which reads like black from far away, but up close you can see it has green and purple and even some rusts that sort of pick up the shade of the crosses. So I think all three of these colors just look magnificent together. I'm really, really, really pleased with my choices there. And I feel like, so when I picked these, I was looking at Madeline Tosh, and I was just sort of falling in love with Madeline Tosh, and just remembering how I want to knit basically every single colorway that they create. And I think there's probably going to be a lot more Madeline Tosh in my future. So this is her work sock base, their work sock base. Madeline Tosh is not an actual person. It is owned by a man and a woman, so I should say their work sock base. Anyway, it's not sock weight. It's technically a sport weight. I bought this because Kaitlin, Full Jewel, has been raving about it. She's a big Mad Tosh fan, and she said like this base is incredible and that you can frog it back a million times and it doesn't screw up, and that it was just very hard wearing. And I loved the idea of knitting myself a sweater, you know, after knitting something like this with the cashmere where it's like pilling a little bit. I love this sweater. I know it's going to get a lot of wear, and I wanted it to be made out of something really durable. So I liked the idea of that. And Kaitlin said that even though it's a sport, it's a very heavy sport and it's almost more of a DK. So this is written for a DK. So I thought I want to do it with work sock. And I also know that I probably don't need as much ease as I think she built in like 16 inches of positive ease or something insane like that. Maybe it was 10. I don't remember, but it was a lot. And I was like, if it's almost a DK, I'm just going to knit it at a gauge that makes a nice fabric with this and know that it'll be a little bit smaller. So there will be a little bit less positive ease. So I'm just going to knit my regular size. I'm going to knit the medium. And I think that's looking like it's going to work out. I didn't even do a gauge swatch, you guys, because like I said, Kaitlin Hunter, there's just a lot of room for experiments like this. So I'm knitting this on US 3s, which I think is a 3.25 millimeter. And it gives me a very dense fabric, which I really, really like. When you're doing color work, you want a dense fabric because you don't want to be seeing the floats behind it and everything. You want it to sort of meld together and work as one piece of fabric. And I feel like that is totally what I'm getting here. So I'm knitting it at a pretty dense gauge. I think it's a little bit denser than the pattern, and it's certainly a smaller needle and a lighter weight yarn than the pattern. But as I said, I think it's just going to give me slightly less negative ease, and it's all going to come out in the wash, so to speak. So I'm very into it. Very, very, very into it. This is a huge, oversized, almost swan showish pattern. I'm gonna go through another repeat of this color work before I break for the sleeves. So the break for the sleeves is like down onto your arm a good ways, to give you an idea. And yeah, I'm completely in love with it. I mean, I love the Swiss cross look. I have knit other things with that design before, and it's just one of those images that I'm very drawn to. And I love the yarn, and I'm loving working on it. I started it in Magic Loop, and I had to stay in Magic Loop because of how small the circumference was. You can see there's some short row shaping for the back of the neck there. I had to stay in Magic Loop until after the crosses, and then when I picked up for these flags, I was out of Magic Loop, but it was still a little bit tight on the needle, so that slowed me down a little bit. When I got through the flags, I did another increase row, and it's now comfortable on the cable that I have. So I think I'm going to be speeding up a little bit, which is nice. But yeah, not much else to say about that, I guess, except just how happy I am. I have Pigwidgeon on here. I think he's the perfect little colors to go with my color scheme, so that makes me happy, of course. I'm always a sucker for coordinating those things. So that's everything I'm working on. It's a lot. I feel like, on the one hand, I feel like I'm knitting a lot right now, but I also feel like I'm not knitting as much as I wish I were. But I'm finding that balance. I'm prioritizing the stuff that I'm supposed to be prioritizing, which means I'm knitting less than I wish I were, but it's still a lot, and especially with recording just like once a month, I feel like there's so much to talk to you about when I do sit down to record. Almost too much. So we'll see how that goes. But thank you for stopping in. It has been so nice to sit here and chat with you a bit about what I am working on these days. If you've made it this far and you enjoy the show, I appreciate so much anytime that you give a thumbs up, because that just lets YouTube know that there's something of value here, and it helps other people find the videos. So that means a lot to me. If you haven't subscribed yet and you want to subscribe, that means a ton to me as well. And of course, I always love to see your comments. And thank you for watching as always, and I guess I will see you back here at the beginning of October for the next episode. And let me know if you're interested in little weekend vlogs for Vlogtober, and we'll see if that's something I can fit in. Yeah, see you guys soon. Bye.